Hey there, Pisces. How are you doing? So this is the start of your 2-week forecast, taking you from the 27th of April, which is the new moon in Taurus, and taking you right the way through to the full moon in Scorpio on the 12th of May. Now, this is an interesting period of time. Not as interesting, I have to say, as the previous months where we've had the Mars, Venus, and Mercury retrogrades, and also the eclipses, and also Neptune changing signs and the North Node changing signs. No, it's a bit calmer than that, thankfully. And in this 2-week period, we've just got Venus and Mercury are changing signs. Obviously, the moon's whizzing around all the time, but Venus and Mercury are changing signs in a way that I think is really going to help us to take a bit more take action a bit more and to feel a lot more embodied in the process that we're going through currently in life. So I think this is going to be helpful for you. So if you've been here before, welcome back. Thanks for joining me again. But if you're new to this channel, my name's Louisa Tanner Munson. Hi. The way I use the way I use astrology, and I call it feel good astrology, is to give you the sense that astrology isn't fatalistic. Now there's lots of astrologers out there will say, yes, it bloody is. Don't you do that. But I sometimes find that if we get really kind of penned in our astrological forecasts, it doesn't necessarily give us this feeling that we've got any choice or any possibilities. And that's where I kind of fall out with astrology. So it's an intuitive astrological process I'm taking you through, and I'm hoping it helps to that it helps you feel open and positive about what's to come. So anyway, let's have a look now at the charts, and let's see where this takes us. And the first thing that occurs to me, this is a waxing moon forecast. So the waxing moon forecast is all about the moon growing. I mean, obviously the moon's not growing. The moon is the same size throughout, but with this, as we start this forecast, the new moon is a dark moon. It is completely unilluminated. What this means to me is we are blind. We are in a deeply intuitive phase. It's a very internalized process. It's a time when we don't have all the answers readily available, and we have to tune right into ourselves. So you'll see by the end of this process, we're at the full moon stage and it's fully illuminated. What this means to me is this is a very externalized thing where we can absolutely see what's around us, see all the opportunities. In fact, this is kind of like a clean slate. The new moon really shows us where we've got like a blank canvas. We've let go of a lot of things, and we're free to sow some new seeds and plant seeds of desire, plant things in the place into our life that we would like to bring forwards into our world and into our existence. And the full moon really shows where things have manifested. Now, I'm not saying if you sow a seed at the time of the new moon that 2 weeks later it will be fully manifested. I don't think it works like that. But around the time of the full moon, I really think that we get the true cost of where our thoughts and energies have taken us. So this is, the waxing moon phase, which is a growth period. We can be sowing things that could be manifesting and feeling great around the time of the full moon, or if we're kind of swimming in negative thoughts and we're not really being mindful of how we're using our energy, we could have some quite chaotic things. And I think around the time of the full moon, it really gives you a clue as to how you're doing. Are you really creating the life the way you want it to be? I.e., it feels exciting around the time of the full moon. Yes, there's lots coming in. Might be a bit overwhelming, but you're buzzing. Or does it feel terrible? Does it feel like, really overwhelming, emotionally overwhelming? I think at those times it shows that at some point in this journey, you've made some decisions that aren't in alignment with who you are. So I really see that this 2-week period is about you getting back into alignment and to growing the energies that you really want to see come up into your world. And the first part of this, coming up to the first quarter, it's mainly in the dark, which means we are absolutely tuning in. We are needing to use our full intuition, a process of self-inquiry, journaling, meditation. We are not so outward. We are a lot more internalized. We're a lot more at home. And as such, I think we need to take it easy. We need to be really gentle with ourselves, because we are our own tool. We are the person that we need to be listening to. So we need to really make sure we are kept in top condition. As we come into this second part of the forecast period, I think the 4th of May, we're a lot more externalized. Clues and information are coming at us or towards us. And so we need to be able to receive information and be open to it, and then to be able to process it. So this is much easier, I think. And it's a lot faster. Things start to speed up as we go through this 2-week process. And as such, I think it's also important just to quickly see how this feeds into an actual diary. I find it quite helpful to see how it can be laid out. It looks, I'm able to sort of visualize it in my mind's eye. So, the new moon in Taurus starts on the 27th of April on a Sunday. The midpoint, halfway through from dark to light, that is on the 4th of May. And that really represents a choice point where we're needing to step it up a bit. And then the full moon in Scorpio, again, this is based on British times. I'm in the UK time zone. It appears to be happening on in the early hours of Monday, but you might find if you're in North America or Hawaii, for instance, that this is actually happening on the 11th. So just, you might need to check your own times. And I recommend timeanddate.com is a great place. If you go to the sun and moon tab, I think it's called, and then go to the moon cycles or moon phases, you'll see the actual time of the new moon and the full moon in your own unique time zone. So please feel free to use that. In between these 2 moons, and I think these are like emotional bookends at, at the ends of each of these this period of time. The new moon is pretty involved. You've got all the energy of new potential and this blank slate and this feeling of, right, I'm ready to start again. And at the same time, there is an ongoing opposition between Pluto and Mars. It's been going on. It's been coming in since the end of October. We had an exact opposition between the Pluto and Mars on the 3rd of November, then another exact one on the 3rd of January. And then we've got the last one going exact on the 27th of April. So this is the last one. After this point, thank goodness, Pluto and Mars are coming out of their opposition. However, even by the time of the full moon in Scorpio, they are still technically in opposition, but it's getting easier and easier and easier. So it's all starting to release and unravel, I think, from the new moon in Taurus. However, right at the end of this forecast period, the full moon itself is really quite spicy. The full moon is in opposition to the sun, which it always is, but it's in opposition to the sun in a conjunction with Uranus. Now, Uranus really makes things unpredictable. And the full moon, at the best of times, is a time of emotional, like when we're highly emotional, highly charged, highly triggerable. And so I think this particular full moon is going to be quite interesting. It has the possibility of it going completely out of control. And it just so happens that, we've got the full moon in Scorpio, the moon and the sun in fixed signs, and also Pluto and Mars are also in fixed signs still. So it's like we have these two oppositions in what looks like a grand cross. It's actually not in a cross, but it is still very, very fixed, and it's creating a really strong energy. And so what I'm going to do over the next short while is go through 3 different charts. Three different charts for the new moon in Taurus, the switch point midway through, and then the full moon in Scorpio. But like I said, these 2 big moons are like bookends, and in between, I think this is a time when we need to be quite soft with ourselves. I don't think we need to quest. I think we need to observe what's going on. I've looked at each of the signs from different perspectives. For instance, I record a relationship and connection forecast for each sign of the zodiac, and also a career and ambition forecast for each sign of the zodiac. And I've already recorded these. And, I can tell you, when I've deep dived into each of these, I really see that, in between these 2 moons, it feels like we're in this moment of deep change. It feels like we're formulating a new plan, but we're still internalizing things. So it's with that energy that I share this information with you. So in this 2-week period, the first one is really quite, I've only included the most important aspects as I see them. So the first thing is Venus is going into Aries, having been in Pisces for quite a while. And Venus is going into Aries on Wednesday, the 30th of April. Now, Venus isn't very strong in the sign of Aries. However, she's been in Pisces where she's exalted, but she's a little bit of a people pleaser, a little bit magical, and also not necessarily very clear. And so Venus coming into Aries, I think, is marking a time when we're coming back into emotional clarity and clarity in terms of our relationships. We're ready to take action a little bit more with the people we're relating to. And I think this is a good thing. I think the spring in particular with Venus and Mercury retrograde has marked a time when a lot of us have been in a state of confusion. It's given us a lot of time to really review how we feel in life and what's working, what's not working. However, I really see that Venus moving into Aries on the 30th of April as being a time when we're ready to move forwards a little bit. And, Venus is also coming into a conjunction with Neptune on Friday, the 2nd of May. Now, this is also really interesting to me because Venus has already made 2 conjunctions with Neptune this year. That's not normal. We normally have 1 conjunction each year. And for the last 13 years or so, Venus has made her conjunctions with Neptune in the sign of Pisces, which is very much like a fairy godmother kiss or, someone waving a magic wand. It's very magical. It's full of promise. It's full of imagination and like really sort of like pulling your highest dreams together and believing in rainbow colored unicorns. It's all sort of like magical and very much like a little 5-year-old girl's birthday party, but not necessarily about to take action. Now, Venus coming into a conjunction with Neptune on Friday the 2nd is going to be the first one that's occurring in the sign of Aries. So what I really think that this is a moment for us to wish big, but start to form a plan to make our wishes come true. Venus and Neptune is really about feeling the flow and creativity at a much higher level and being able to integrate it into our bodies. So I really think we can, anything we want to bring into a clear manifestation, anywhere we want to feel elevated and ethereal and celestial and feel really, really great that our life is really turning out in the way we want it to. Now we can start to build it as part of a plan. This Venus conjunct Neptune in Aries is asking us to take action. And if you're ready to take action, I think the necessary steps will all start to fall into place, in particular after the 4th of May. So I really think the 2nd of May is a time to hold the potential energy of this particular conjunction. I think it's exciting. Now, in week 2, there's some real building block energies. In particular, on the 5th of May, Mercury in an exact sextile with Jupiter is really showing that we can be a lot more friendly, a lot more collaborative. We can talk plainly and a lot. We can share a lot together. And so I think this is a really helpful energy, especially as we're coming into the more lightened times of the moon. The moon appears to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger in the night sky. We are more consciously aware of great things, great helpful collaborative things in our life. So friendships are really, really important. And then on the 6th of May, Venus is in a sextile to Pluto. Now this could be great if you're in a sexual relationship, a loving relationship as well. Things could get really deep and your trust in each other can really deepen. But, however you choose to use this energy, I think the ability to trust in the process and trust each other and go deeper into our collaborative lives, I think this is working beautifully. Now, on the next day, Mercury makes an exact conjunction with Chiron, and this could be quite ouchy if you're triggered and if you don't have great relationships with people, for sure. If there's no outlet for this could be quite difficult. But Mercury in a conjunction with Chiron in the sign of Aries is really showing this moment where we can be transparent, we can articulate what we've been feeling. And I think where our feelings really come up in such a way that we know what's going on. Like often, I think our hurts, particularly psychological wounding, I think it can be, we can separate it from ourselves. We talk about, when this happened to me, and it's almost like a badge of honor. And the moment we label it, we see it slightly outside of ourselves, like it's a thing. And when it's slightly outside of ourselves, it's really difficult to process things, So I really think with this Mercury conjunct Chiron energy, we are able to feel what's going on, to be able to talk about it, and for the potential of it to be processed. So if you add these three together, and remember, these are the days when these energies are exact. That's not to say to be fair, they're already in place pretty much throughout this whole 2-week period. But this is the fulcrum point of this. This is when they're really, really coming into play. So I think the 5th to the 7th of May in particular, it marks a time when we can come together as friends. We can feel things much more passionately and come into a deeper level of trust and truth, and also open up to the things we're vulnerable about. So this could represent a time of great change within relationships. Now, coming up to the 10th of May, Mercury moves into Taurus. And then I think the way we communicate is starting to get a lot more practical. And I think that's helpful, so we take some of the fire out of some of the communications that are going on. And maybe in the news, things won't be so inflammatory, although who knows, I suspect they will. But Mercury into Taurus is really, I think we will be communicating from a place of practicality, with provable evidence, and in such a way where we're trying to work together rather than trying to piss each other off, which I think is a good thing. So that's how I think these 2 weeks, these are the things that really stand out. But before I go any further, and I will bring up the 3 charts I've selected in just a moment. But before I do that, I want to just say a big thank you to everybody that supports this channel. I really, really admire you, and I'm really glad that you're in my life. Thank you so much for this. People support the channel through buying me a coffee, or also, I've got a membership, Feel Good Astrology Community, where there are extra readings. I'll tell you about it a little bit at the end, but all the details are below in the description field. So if that sounds like something that might be interesting to you, to support the channel, to get extra readings, to get discounts and things like that, and also the chance to join us. There's a growing, lovely sort of team feeling there, then please do consider that. But anyway, let's have a look at these charts now. So Pisces, we've looked at the diary and we've got a sense of, what phase of the moon we're in, and obviously the moon is waxing, it's growing. So things are going to get busier as this 2 weeks goes on. But, how are these charts going to be affecting you? We can see here that the new moon is working on your 3rd house. So this is a house to do with community. It's a house where the narrative that you grew up in is really alive and kicking. It really describes, your relationships with your siblings and the people around you that are part of your day-to-day living. And you've got the Pluto and Mars opposition happening out through your 6th house and your 12th house. So we've got the 12th, the 3rd, and the 6th house as real important parts of your life right now. And when we factor in the emerging full moon that's happening in around 2 weeks' time on the 12th of May, you'll find that the 4 houses now that are of interest is the 12th, the 3rd, the 6th, and the 9th. So now these houses are really interesting, because the 3rd and the 9th, I really think this is what we know to be true and what we've been taught and what is part of our foundational knowledge, versus what we're wanting to learn because there's something more. Like everything that is contained in here contains nothing of here. So, we are in this place of absolute knowing to a place of there's more besides, there's something else to learn. And so this is the kind of sun and moon journey we're on at the moment. We're exploring, what do we already know to be true, and where might we want more, need more for our evolution? What else is possible, I guess, is a really good question for this. And then with Pluto and Mars going through the 12th and the 6th house, we've got this desire to stabilize our life by getting a lot more direct with how we organize our money, our work, our cleaning up, our health, our diet, etc., etc. Like, how do every part of our manifest lives, how do they fit together? And Mars here is really wanting to get to grips with it and to get it working, get it fit for purpose so that you can be really highly functional. And of course, that's a very physical thing. And then you've got the 12th house, which is this mysterious place, this place of the unconscious mind where all your stories fall away. So on the one hand, you're born into stories and you're working hard to develop your stories whilst also knowing there's something else possible, which creates a bit of a conflict. And not only is there more possible, but there's a lot that's just dropping away. So I really see that this 2 weeks ahead for you, Pisces, is about the stories. So, like, who would you be without the labels would be one of my questions. And the other one is, which stories are you ready to drop, and which ones are your new stories? Which are the ones that are coming in? So if we go back to the new moon in Taurus, this first chart, what really occurs to me is it feels like it's time for a new start within your community. So if you've strayed away, if you felt at odds with people, it's now time to come back into the fold. It feels like a time where you can celebrate, where you can be in a place of togetherness, where you start to interact more with the people around you. And it feels good to be home. I really see it as a homecoming. It's not the house to do with the home, but it's where your home is based. It's like what's around you. Possibly, if you, it's also the kind of culture of the work that you're in. So the people that you are meeting through your work all the time. So for instance, my community space, if I was to step outside my home, I know all the local cafes and this, that, and the other, and the parks and stuff. But like, if I was to do that with my work, I'd be stepping outside and thinking of all the online clients that I work with, in particular, my regular ones. They are the ones that give me my cultural context of what's right in my life right now. So, this is you coming into this feeling of homecoming, like you feel at home, what's at home. So to me, it feels like a brand new start. And this can be really great. It can make you feel very much like you belong, like you know who you are, because we get a lot of confidence from these stories. They really help us to kind of have that knowing, oh, this is who I am, this is where I belong, and this is what I believe. There is a kind of narrative that goes along with your affiliation. It's a strong time where where I guess what I'm thinking of is like a school of fish. They all swim together because they know they're safe together. It feels right together. And in many ways, this Pluto and Mars opposition is really showing you that you are wanting to make your constructed life more real and to get a lot more organized. And that really fits in fairly well with your community life, because at least they are kind of constructed. They're both manifest. They're both what appears to be real. But Pluto, on the other hand, like Pluto coming through this 12th house, coming into the 12th house, can bring up a lot of fears, because it really directly connects you into your unconscious mind, your intuition, the Akashic records, if you feel like you can tune in and stuff. And it can bring up a lot of powers that you're maybe not used to. And it can make you realize that there's a lot more out there. And so some of these things that on the surface happen in your local community, there's also another aspect of life that a lot of people seem to go around ignoring, and yet is really real for you. And Pluto shows us what we're afraid of. So you may well be kind of afraid of questioning your normal life, whilst also recognizing there's a lot of power in knowing that your life as it has seemed so far is very different. So like, how do you get this integration? So what I really realize right now, and this might be helpful to you to know, is with this new moon in the sign of Taurus, there's the invitation to connect with a new kind of person within your community. And what that really means to me is the more you can understand that there is more to life, that there is this manifest life, there is this demanifesting life, there is the life of creating stories. There's the also side of life where you're realizing a lot of stories maybe don't hold water, and that it's okay to let go of your stories. If you can hold both of these truths, I think you're able to find a much more authentic community within your community. So this is really a new start. This is the melting pot. Now, as you go through this 2-week period, I think the melting pot like the moon. And I have to say, as full moons go, having the full moon coming across the third and the ninth house polarity isn't as difficult as it is when it's in an angular house, for sure. But, as the moon is going around this part of your chart in this 2-week period, the moon is coming to a place of really wanting openness. So it's like this emotional feeling of, I need openness, I need space, I really need to be myself, I need to feel free. So it's this like craving for freedom, this craving to embrace everything that's different, everything that's new, to go deeper, to ask that question, why? And that question, why, in this part of the chart is like a fart in a spacesuit. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants it at all, because it's got a bit of a stench. To me, if you're asking why in your local community, lots of people will close up and their walls go up straight away, because like when you're questioning the stories other people accept, by default, people read that as, this person doesn't believe like me, therefore they're different. So the walls come up. People feel like someone's trying to change you, or that, they might think that you think they're stupid, so this yearning that you're going through right now is taking you into uncharted territories that may cause waves and ripples of difficulty in your local environment. So what I would recommend, especially towards the 12th, is that you maybe don't go anywhere around that time where the prevailing story is really set. You might choose to do something wild, or you might choose to do something really uncharted with people who are really ready to be free and spontaneous. But most likely around the full moon in Scorpio, your kind of emotional set point is quite disturbing to people that are very regular, and also that know you in a particular context. So I guess my advice really is, around the full moon, don't play with your context too much around people that you want to keep in your life, even though they might not want their minds like blown. So around the time of the full moon, I think it's time to explore what is right for you. Now, this, even though these are all kind of in squared houses, I do think the moon going into this expansion around the time of the full moon, and Pluto in your 12th, are also working in a kind of compatibility. Pluto in the 12th is really showing that life is just not as you see it. It's really, really different. And the moon in the 9th is saying there's so much more. And so how can you go into an internal journey around the time of the full moon? That would be my biggest recommendation, is how can you experience something from the question, what else is possible? But how can you do it more internally, so that you go through internal shifts, so that you are going through shifts in your unconscious mind, in your intuition? It would be a perfect time for a retreat, like a retreat specifically to help you lose your stories or help you rewrite your stories. So I think that's where I'm going to leave it, Pisces. To me, it just feels like there's something very fundamental going on for you, whereby you're creating a new way of being at home. Like, how can you feel more at home whilst honoring your sense of new possibility? I mean, that is, I think, in a nutshell, what I think these current two weeks, this current 2-week forecast period is about. How can you be more at home whilst being open to what is possible? Now, obviously, this chart can be read from lots of different perspectives, and this is a very sort of general look, but this also affects your relationships. For instance, the 7th house, which is ruled by Mercury, Mercury is in this 3rd house of community during this forecast period. It goes from the 2nd to the 3rd, and it also affects how you are in your career, because obviously if you're discovering new ways of being, that's going to have a knock-on effect on your career and also your ambitions. And so what I do each month, and I mentioned this earlier, every new moon, every full moon, I release romance and also career forecasts. And if you would like to access them, all you need to do is go to www.school, that's SKOOL.com/Feel Good Astrology. You get 1 week's free trial. So you'll get one set of these forecasts that you can listen to for free, complimentary to you. So you get 4 forecasts every month. Sometimes 6 actually, according to the new and full moon cycles. But every 2 weeks, there's some career and relationship advice for every sign of the zodiac. So you can listen to your sun sign and your ascendant sign, and maybe even your moon sign if you fancy it, or you can listen to the ones for your friends and family, those nearest and dearest to you. Now, if you have considered getting a consultation with me, it's worth doing once you've got through your 1 week's free trial. If you confirm yourself as a member, there are discounts for you. So that might be of interest. The last thing I would say is a lot of people just turn up for the actual forecasts. But if you're interested in more of a community change, and you want to make some friends and learn a little bit more about astrology or share your passion with astrology, I do one community hangout each month. And that's a time, where I go out to the community and say, come on, what's on your mind? And based on the answers I get, I put in some suggestions. And then we hang out, we record it, it's on Zoom. Everyone gets access to the replay within the community. And so we've touched on some really deep stuff. It's a lot of beautiful sharing. There's a lovely energy between us. And if you think that sounds right for you too, then you may well find this of interest. So if that sounds good, then just go to www.school.com/feelgoodastrology. All of the details are below in the description field. But anyway, have a fantastic 2 weeks ahead, Pisces. Yes, this is an interesting time for you as you're rewriting new stories and just, working out how you can fit in, even though you don't feel like you can fit in. So big stuff. Anyway, loads of love and catch you in another forecast real soon. Bye for now.